Greetings friends and acolytes of the galaxy, and welcome back to the channel. A while back we did 2 videos talking about the various force organizations around the galaxy that adhered to both the light and the dark sides of the force, but were not affiliated with either the Jedi or Sith in philosophy nor orders. In the dark side video, we spoke briefly about some organizations that were actually more neutral in their state in the force, not specifically leaning to the light or dark, and either attempting to strike a balance or remaining in a gray area. Before we go any further though, I want to dispel something right away. This video will not be talking about the Grey Jedi. While some of these organizations might be considered to be Grey Jedi, we will only be talking about concepts that have been officially introduced as either legends or canon. Also, we won't be talking about the ancient Jedi Order either, as they had actually eventually evolved into the Jedi Order, so we are deeming them light side based. We will exclusively be covering orders that are completely distinguished from the Jedi and Sith. So without further ado, let's begin our list of the 5 neutral force organizations. The first of which we would like to discuss today is perhaps the most famous in the Gensurai. The Gensurai are most likely where the misconception of Grey Jedi actually started. The Gensurai were an order of Force users who arose during the Clone Wars era. Their name was the Sith pureblood word for followers of the hidden truth, and the Gensurai philosophy and methodology were a blend of the Sith and Jedi traditions. Their hierarchy loosely resembled that of the Jedi Order due to their founder, a Jedi Knight named Nikos Tyrus. Tyrus was pursuing the archives of the Jedi Temple, reviewing some of the Order's history, when he found himself sneaking his way into the forbidden section of the archives. In here, he found a manuscript that was detailing the early days of the Jedi Order, specifically though, the Second Great Schism and the rise of the Sith. Most of the information contained within was factually correct, save for one crucial detail. The manuscript claimed a shocking revelation. The Jedi stole everything they knew from the Sith before exiling them. The truths of the manuscript's contents were naturally questionable and biased, as it had been written by a dark Jedi long ago who had become disillusioned with the Jedi. However, Tyrus unquestionably accepted the lies of the manuscript and turned his back on the Jedi Order, believing this to be the true origin. He would go on to then create the order known as the Gensurai, who looked upon the dark and light sides of the Force to be one and the same, by blending passion and anger with compassion and peace. Unfortunately, Tyrus did not notice how the manuscript was corrupting him, and he had been walking the path of the dark side unknowingly. Tyrus trained the Knights and Padawans in what he believed to be the secret teachings of the true Jedi, when in fact he was really imparting Sith secrets and Sith lore, unknowingly converting his apprentices to the darkness. The Gensurai Order would be at war with the Jedi for quite some time, offering some complications to the already galaxy-wide threat. Eventually though, following the death of its founder, Tyrus, at the hands of the Jedi Nija Halasen, the succeeding leader of the Gensurai, a human female apprentice of Tyrus, who was bent on the title of Sari Kar, was unable to interpret the higher dark side teachings that Tyrus had been studying, leading to more confusion within the Gensurai Order. Their new leader, though, taught the Gensurai what they did in fact know, emphasizing the values of community defense and avoiding confrontation. Ironically, in doing so, she unwittingly led the Gensurai away from darkness, and the Order would make peace with the Jedi following the fall of the Galactic Empire with Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Academy. However, some still believe that the Order of the Gensurai and their teachings are absolutely correct, and that the Jedi not only betrayed the Sith, but created them. The next order of quote-unquote Grey Jedi we will review is known as the Killian Rangers. Another especially interesting case, the Killian Rangers were an organization based in the unknown regions. These pilgrims were human colonists sent from the core to do some exploration and hopefully colonize the unknown regions. They eventually settled on the moon of Kalia 5 sometime around the year 1000 BBY, and at some point they lost all contact with the outside galaxy. Interestingly enough, their history happened nearly parallel to that of the Jedis. They valued chivalry, justice, and the rule of law. When the group became aware of Force-sensitive children, they would apprentice them as squires around the age of puberty. These squires served the Killian Rangers as apprentices and servants. The most powerful Killian Rangers, equivalent to Jedi Masters, were called Killian Lords. At any one time, there were no more than 5 members, usually 1 Killian Lord, 2 Rangers, and 2 squires. Just like the Jedi had, the Killian Rangers would experience their own schism in the Force, and a dark side version of them would be born and dubbed the Renegade. They didn't use lightsabers, but rather used an ancient technology to create lances and small, personal energy shields worn on their offhand. Not much more information is known about this great order, but I personally find it interesting that the way in which the history of the Jedi Order has been followed was directly mirrored by another people in a group who knew nothing of the Jedi prior to their own formation. The next group that we'd like to talk about is the Imperial Knights, which were established as a sect of Force users that came around the year 44 BBY with the rise of the Fel Empire. The Fel Empire, or the Fel Dynasty, was much like the successor to the Galactic Empire as ruled by Palpatine. However, the Fel Emperor actually mostly adhered to the light side of the Force. The Knights of the Fel Empire wore red armor and carried silver lightsabers, and they did not actually serve the Force directly, but their philosophy dictated that by serving the will of their Emperor, they were vicariously serving the Force itself. So you see, the Fel Emperor served the light side of the Force, and if the Imperial Knights were to believe that he had fallen to the dark side, it was actually their job to attempt to sway him back to the light or forcibly remove him. The Imperial Knights were said to be among the most talented and dangerous Force users in the entire galaxy, and every bit as capable of Force use as the Jedi Order had been. The Imperial Knights made extensive use of their combat armor, and were as such, were constantly prepared for combat at any time, with some deeming that they were more skilled in combat than the Jedi. They trained strictly for combat, and had no contemplation on the Force, having even developed 2 new combat forms, the more aggressive form called Praetoria Volnil, and the defensive-minded Praetoria Issue. They also learned to fight using many of the same lightsaber combat techniques and forms as the Jedi. The Imperial Knights were warriors, rather than negotiators, a fact that they would never make excuses for. Their training saw them learn how to use the Force to transform themselves into living weapons. Their history and story is rather extensive, as it has to do a lot with the story of Cade Skywalker. So if you'd like a video just talking about the Imperial Knights, be sure to let us know in the comments. Moving on, we had the group known as the Disciples of the Twilight. The Disciples of the Twilight were a Force-sensitive order based on Sith, a moon that was located in the shadows of the Outer Rim planet. After the moon was colonized around 900 BBY by humans who were seeking to break away from the Galactic Republic, a female known only as Twilight, who was rumored to have been a former Jedi, and other Force-sensitive colonists founded the Disciples of the Twilight. Members of the tradition became defenders and protectors of the world's citizen, although the group had no political nor military influence nor allegiance. The members of the group sought to combine their efforts so that they could adapt to the dark environment. The group believed in shadowy justice. When the tradition's members spread across the galaxy and the Discepith's discovery by the Republic, they sought to protect weaker sentients from the cruelty of the strong. While the Disciples of the Twilight consisted primarily of Discepith natives, anyone who was Force-sensitive and agreed with the Disciples' beliefs were welcome to join the group. Their talents in the Force were exclusively used to quite literally bend light and darkness, which aided in their combat and their survivability on the moon. The Disciples were capable of using the powers of Cloak of Shadow and Shadow Armor to bend light so that they could render themselves invisible to intruders. They used the Force to gain low light vision and to locate enemies that concealed themselves. The Adepts could also utilize the Force to create illusory phantoms around any enemy. Needless to say, they were very dangerous. And finally, the last one for our list today was known as the Wardens of the Sky. The Wardens believed that it was their responsibility to use their knowledge of space and the Force to make space lanes safe for everyone to travel on. They believed that everyone had a right to travel to space, and so would do such things as fight pirates or help smugglers. Smugglers who they believed were defying the tyrants of the space lane. They also had no central organization, and each Warden operated completely alone, patrolling space lanes and watching out for travelers who needed help. From time to time, wardens would encounter other Force-sensitive travelers, and if the warden believed that they had potential, would approach such Force users and offer to take them on as an apprentice. After completing training as an apprentice, the student would leave to patrol the space lanes alone. They did not use any weapons, believing that firing blasters on board starships was very dangerous. The wardens were masters of unarmed combat though. They developed a unique fighting style that involved the combination of Force techniques as well as martial arts. Over time, the wardens became myth. This anonymity though worked in their favor as they were very much real and allowed them to evade detection from Sith and later from the Empire. But there are a few of the many Force organizations of the galaxy that may be considered gray in nature. But what do you think? Do any of these particularly catch your interest? Let us know down below. And as always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and I hope that you have a great day.